everyone. Welcome one more time to our podcast episodes. Today we have my friend and guest Fábio Nakamura. Fábio is a university professor. We met each other at Spain, Granada. We were at the FSI's conference, and from my experience, when we first Fábio started to talk to each other, it was very interesting. We went directly into the topics of football and topics that we are both interested. And I was thinking, well, you're like a walking encyclopedia, so it will be perfect to do this interview with you. But before we start, can you tell us more about yourself?
Yes, Marco. First of all, I wish to thank you for the invitation to take part of this conversation. It's a podcast, but in the end, we are just talking here about the topics that we like. Basically, we are both working with training, with testing, assessments, with periodization or no periodization, and it is quite good to be here with you. Okay, I can give a brief history of my career. I'm a bit, or I'm older than you definitely, and I started my undergrad in 1995. It was in Brazil. Yeah,
You look younger.
I'm 46 now. And yeah, I finished in 1998 the sports undergrad background. Then I did a master in sports. I would say sports physiology because it was more lab based. I was supervised by a professor in another university because I did my undergrad at the University of São Paulo. It's the biggest one in Brazil. And the second one is still in São Paulo, but it's in the countryside of the state. As you know, Brazil is really big. The São Paulo state is big as well. And I did my master in the countryside. And after finishing the master, I started the PhD. It was around 2001 maybe. And during the PhD, I was approved to start the career as a professor in a public university in another state. It's in Paraná state in Brazil. So this is the beginning, and this is how I started working in sports science.
Yeah, and you are doing an amazing job, after that whole journey, because the last I checked, you have more than 500 publications and something like 10,000 citations. So it's pretty amazing. You are doing an amazing job for us, with all the research and with all the conclusions. And well, the main topic that we will try to discuss today is I would like to talk with you more about how do you see periodization and how do you see maybe some progresses in strength sessions. And well, we can start with the periodization. What is your approach to the periodization? How do you see and how do you look on it?
Yeah, this is a very good question because in our field there are many discussions among practitioners and researchers about the adequacy of using traditional or different periodization models in the practical settings, because we know that sometimes what we read on the book is good, is right, even exercise physiology or biomechanics, any different subject. But when we turn into the practice, sometimes the theory is not so robust to sustain the practice. Then sometimes I see there is a conflict between what we write or what we read on the books, even the papers, and what is seen in the practice. And about the periodization, I would say that I'm not a big expert on the topic because I've never worked in research, or I've never wrote a book about periodization, but I read some of them, especially the traditional ones. And actually, when I was very young, Mateviev has been in Brazil, and I was attending a course for like 15 people. I was one of them, and I think the ideas are quite interesting. They should be contextualized to the country, to the culture. I think this is important. It's not something that you can apply everywhere. That's my impression. But just to be straightforward, I don't see the necessity of applying periodization models in all the situations, in all sports, and across different clubs, even in the same sport. So it's highly dependent on the context and if you need it or not. So I'm not so attached or so closely related to periodization models to say that we need it. But I want just to hear your opinion as well.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, do we need it or do we not need it? Well, the main problem for me was in the team surrounding. When I was start working as a young strength conditioning coach, I always planned like everything in front, 6 weeks model or 8 weeks, some kind of progressions and everything, with the team sport surrounding for 25 people. And I found myself like every time after like 10 days or even earlier that I need to change some progressions, or that I need to change some training sessions. And after a few months or few years, I noticed that maybe this is too much job for my part in front. So maybe there is some better strategy, maybe some better solution. How can I plan? How can I prioritize the training sessions? And that's why I read your paper, and the paper that you sent me, like flexible assessment and flexible planning, and it gave me a pretty nice insight. And in the last year or two, I've been studying the things like something that is called agile periodization. We can call it agile periodization, we can call it flexible, but I think it's a way in direction where we should maybe go in team sports. And I wanted to hear what you have to think about it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that especially in team sports, it's virtually impossible to apply very rigid and strict periodization models. Then in this case, I think we should start speaking about planning, because planning is less committed to a fixed idea. So planning is just how do you point the arrow of your training or your goals, and then okay, I want to go through this way. But sometimes you have to move a bit, you have to change your objectives, because each individual develops differently, the team develops differently in terms of results, and in team sports it's highly dependent on the results of the matches in the end, because sometimes you don't play so well, but if you win, you have this decision. But if you are defeated, then maybe the decision should be that's the point. So I think it's better to have a general planning, and even you can have the plan A, the plan B, the plan C, and so on. And in the micro, let's say, the microscopic level, you can have the programming. So planning and programming, I think they are concepts that fit better to the reality of sports. And maybe we can avoid talking about periodization all the time, because we don't need to mention periodization all the times. And if we are not periodizing, it's better to avoid using the term. That's my opinion.
Yeah, so it's better to use like planning and programming according to the situation that you are, let's say, that you are in. I like that you mentioned micro. We will get back to this micro something later, but I would like to stay a little bit more about the planning and programming. And what do you think that is maybe the best time period, not the best, but like recommended time period for you that we should like plan things in front? I checked that in different expertise, not strength conditioning and physical domain, but they are using something that is called like sprints of 1 or 2 weeks, and it's also something that we are using in our company, like 2 week sprints that we have. Okay, we have a goal, we need to do these things, and after 2 weeks we again sit down, check what we have done, and then repeat the process. What do you think, what is the good timing period?
Yeah, I think that just for because it's easy, we can start thinking of weekly monitoring, because in the end we do weekly monitoring. When the week is finished, we start thinking of the next week and next match, because in most of the clubs, especially those ones not involved in the European competitions, we have a weekly match. Then the match is the goal, the match is the objective of that microcycle. We are still speaking about microcycle, but we don't need to say that. We can say a training week. And I think that, yeah, I agree with you that if we have one goal, the short term or the immediate goal is the next match. But of course, we still need to think of the next one,
Next match, yeah.
in anticipation. And it's almost impossible to think about the third one, because it's too far from the moment.
Yeah,
So
but we
2
need to
weeks
have
makes
it.
sense.
Yeah, but we need to have it in mind, like what we can expect. That's why we mentioned load, and I like this like game to game, 1 week period, and after that game we plan according to that game. We plan the load. Yeah, this is something that is happening all the time in practice, especially in football and with my teams here. You know, we sit down again after a match, then do like an analysis. But you also mentioned that after this game, we need to have in mind next game, and also maybe 2 weeks in front. Something that I like to say to my coaches when I'm speaking about with them about the load that you mentioned is like, can we do, you know, when the coach asks, can we do this kind of day or training load on that day, then my answers is something like, yeah, we can, but it depends what we have done the week before, and it depends what you would like to do the next week. So yeah, we need to think a little bit in front, but to plan like 7 to 10 days, it's also for me sounds pretty good. This is something that I'm also using in practice.
There is an important point that you mentioned, because we are not just looking for the future when we are working in sports performance. We need to take into account the past few weeks. So
Yeah,
at a given moment, you have to take a look on what happened, and what's the monitoring telling you about the last few days or few weeks, and then the challenges that you have on the following weeks. So this is how
That's
it
it.
works, in my opinion. So it's not static; it's quite dynamic, and it moves all the
Dynamic.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I also have one sentence from the field, some experience. You know, when the injury happened, and then someone can say, yeah, but we didn't do nothing like this week. Why he get injured? Yeah, but remember last week, or remember the last 10 days what we have done, because this is something that in the literature they call like chronic load, and this acute load that you are in. So it depends how much you are you here before, or you are with your loads down. So something like that. It's also pretty important to think about it, to think on it. Well, you mentioned load, and I like a load a lot. I like the variables. I like to track the load. I like to, combine different types of load. And I would like to ask you your opinion on what are the recommended strategies for you from your side to track, let's say in football, in team sports.
You mean the external loads? How do?
Yeah, let's say external loads, maybe internal loads. What is the good combination, or how do you see on load?
Yeah, actually, I think there is another discussion.
Yeah, definitely.
Our field, it's about the concept of load, and I think it's even unnecessary because since centuries ago, we have been talking about load. Then we have a conceptual idea. It's an abstract idea about load, but in terms of operationalization of this concept, we know that when we measure the total distance, when we measure accelerations, decelerations, high intensity runs, and etc., and even sprints, because they are very important in football, for example, we are speaking about some variables that are indicatives of the load. Of course, we don't have a magic variable that represents everything. So we have many variables, and depending on what we want to know about the load, we pick some of them to analyze more in depth. Then, in my opinion, the tracking systems derived load variables, meaning GPSs or cameras and etc., they provide a good indication of our locomotor load.
One type of load, yeah.
Yeah, this is one type of load because we are not measuring, at least directly, shooting, passing, movements in which you need more range of motion and so on. So it's not possible to derive everything from GPSs. Then we need to know what we are looking at when we use the GPS data. And even when we start looking at internal loads, to be honest, we are very limited because a rating of perceived exertion is good, but it's not everything about your internal load. Heart rate is the same. So, in my opinion, we miss some internal or physiological or biochemical variables to better understand the internal load. We are very simplistic nowadays when we look at the internal load. But nowadays, the state of art is this one. External load, GPS derived variables, internal load, we have just two. That's limited, but this is what we have now.
Yeah. As you mentioned, we can go about the load like all day speaking about it, but I would like to go back to microdosing on the topic of periodization. Just to conclude about the load, yeah, it's a pretty complex topic. We are moving in some directions, but I think we have still some questions to be answered on that. Well, to get back to planning and microdosing, you mentioned something micro, and we were speaking before about the duration of week, and also the concept that I really like, and I discussed in one occasion with you about the microdosing, and I have here ready some of your papers about it, and I'm excited to discuss about them. So we can call it microdosing or any other way. But what do you think about this approach? Is it something that can change the future of let's say strength training sessions in team environment, or like endurance strategies inside, or is it just something like a short glue? Maybe it's short term, you can have like short term results from microdosing, or is there any long-term benefit? What do you think about it?
Yeah, it is good that you mentioned this paper. It was published by my colleague José Afonso. I'm one of the co-authors with João Brito. He's from the Portuguese Federation, football. Pedro Figueiredo, Gonzalo, who is the fitness coach of Estoril Praia, a club here in Portugal. So we did a big discussion about this concept because we were a little bit concerned about the misconceptions surrounding the microdosing idea. Okay, because it's quite interesting, but we were a bit worried about the different understandings people had about it. So it's a conceptual paper. It's about differentiating microdosing and distributed practice, because let's say if you perform plyometrics and your program consists of 400 jumps per week, it's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
It's a big volume. So you can do it in 2 training sessions, so 200 jumps per training session, or if you split it into several smaller pieces of training, you can have like 100 per training per day.
Yeah,
But in total, you keep doing 400. So
yeah,
this is not microdosing. Actually, this is distributing your current products. And we were differentiating distributed practice with microdosing. And in our opinion, think that there is a given level of load below which you detrain. Okay, so microdosing should be above this threshold. But if you train above this threshold, you don't necessarily improve your capacities. You can just maintain for a given range of loads. So this is also conceptual, but think that there is this range, and above this second threshold, you start increasing substantially your performance indices. Then microdosing must be something in between. So you have the threshold, the minimum threshold below which you detrain. You have this threshold above which you start improving. So microdosing should be something in between that you administer and apply in your athletes, and they keep doing well. So they maintain their performance. And in several cases in team sports, this is what we do. We don't expect that to improve week by week. We just try to maintain their fitness levels, and that's one of the ways to do it.
Keep them safe.
Yeah,
and you mentioned like the lowest threshold and the threshold that you improve or maintain. Can you give us an example in, let's say, strength training session in football? What is the from your experience, what is the lowest point or something that you should stay in? What is the zone?
Yeah, that's the point. Since it's a concept, now we need to test in different athletes in different playing levels. What is this minimum load? But of course, that it's true that if you have younger players, this microdose will be very low compared to a senior and highly trained peer. So it depends on your training history. It depends on the capacity that you are targeting. But in terms of strength training, one of my ideas is that this is related to the concept of velocity-based training. Because in velocity-based training, you have to control your fatigue levels. So this is good. And I'm pretty sure that if we start monitoring these fatigue levels using different technologies to measure the bar velocity and the velocity loss, we can have the idea on how to manage this minimal load.
Yeah, to manage this fatigue, I like to call this force velocity devices like a GPS for the gym. They are like a GPS in the gym. Well, here in Croatia, I cannot say that we have a lot of clubs that are using force velocity technologies and these devices during their training sessions. And the problem here with us in our surrounding is that sometimes we don't have too much time, to work like 2 or 3 times a week with the whole team on strength. So one of the solutions was distribution of the load, or on the other side was like this principle of microdosing. Like what is the smallest amount of load that we can put on you to have positive effects, but not to have too much like fatigue on you. This was the goal, but as you mentioned, it's hard to answer how much is enough for it, especially for each age category. So it's definitely something that we should study and to check in the future research. And I also encourage here people from creation clubs and teams that they start to use these devices, because it can help you managing your fatigue level, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think that the technology that's being used for this kind of training is becoming more evolved, and they are proposing some very user friendly technologies in which if you just touch the screen, the device will recognize that Marco is training now. Then whatever you do on the machine will be recorded in your training log. And I think this is quite nice for the fitness coach, because at the end of the day, he's able to take a look at the data arising from the training session, and also it can help making the decisions for the next training session within the same week. So this is also compatible with what we spoke about before, which is planning within the week the variations or even the maintenance of the training loads according to the response to the previous training session. So this is becoming more and more interesting for the coaches.
Yeah, it's like a smart gym solution. Yeah, and it can help, like you mentioned, it can help you in your decision-making process, immediately. After training session, you saw the response. Next day, I will change the load, or I will put into more sets or something like that. And I would like to continue in the strength domain. I also read one paper that you, and the presentation that you present about strength training sessions on match day +1, match day +2. This was always a problem. Should we do something after the game, or should not? And especially here in Croatia, it was always a discussion. How does this next day after the game should look like? Can we do some strength or not? What do you think?
Yeah, this is also a good point, because we did this study, and now we are struggling to submit and get it approved, because we got to be honest, two rejections today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we don't have this paper approved, but you're right. I have presented the data in Granada and also in other congresses, even though it's not published. But I think the results are very, very interesting, because we were able to track players in 3 different games, and it was competitive games within the Portuguese under 19 championship.
Mm-hmm.
And we did some tests before the match, and immediately after the match, and at 24 and 48 hours post-match. And we saw that, for example, the horizontal jump was not affected at all by the match. Meaning
Horizontal jump.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it means that if you want to train jumps on match day +1, probably there will be no fatigue, so no damage effects and so on. It doesn't mean that the other muscles are not affected, but at least in terms of performance, horizontal jump will be fine. So you can train even on match day +1. That's what we found.
It was also sorry for interrupting. It was for the all players, or players who will play like 90 minutes or 60 minutes.
we are speaking about the players who played at least 60 minutes.
60 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, so most of them were starters, and they played full match, or maybe most of the minutes of the match.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
I'm quite confident on the result. But when we look at the vertical jump, it's a bit different, because post-match there is a decrease in performance, 24 hours the same, and they are recovered 48 hours after the match.
After the game.
So it's not like saying, oh, all the jumps can be performed in the same way. And this is interesting. Maybe we need to stress a bit the horizontal vectors of force application when we are training plyometrics on match day +1 or even +2. And horizontal, the vertical ones will be a bit late to recover, but match day +2 you can train easily. In terms of squat, if I'm not wrong, they were already recovered at match day +1, so just post-match is depressed. And the most interesting result is about hip thrust, because the hip thrust is mobilizing or activating the posterior chain. The posterior chain is very stressed during the matches, sprints, accelerations, and so on. And after 2 days, match day +2, they are not recovered, the muscles. Then, it depends on the exercise. So the practical application, in my opinion, Mark, and I want to hear what you think about it, is that if you want to train when you are ready, it's important to make a very short test of that exercise before training. And if it's too low, it's better to avoid or maybe reduce a lot the volume that you planned.
Yeah, and I will give you my thought. Just to ask one more time, what do you think is that vertical jumps were excellent, they were not recovered, but horizontal did? What happens here?
It's difficult to say, because we were expecting a different result.
Yeah.
Actually, we were expecting a delayed recovery of both horizontal jump and the hip thrust, because they are regarded to the posterior chain. But for some reason, it didn't happen. But as you know, to maintain the horizontal jump distance or even the vertical jump height, we can use different strategies. We can use, a more prolonged eccentric phase. We can use different force applications, and then we can reach the same distance or height. Then maybe in the future we should try to analyze more in depth the kinetics and the kinematics of each jump to better understand what's happening with the mechanism behind the reduction in the vertical jump and not horizontal jump on match day +1.
Yeah, this definitely interesting. To see why this happened in vertical jump but not in horizontal. What can I do here? Well, if I have now this information from you and the study, so it basically means for me that maybe I can use some strategies, as you mentioned, jumps or maybe spots, but this will definitely depend on mental state of the athlete, the game. Have we won? Have we lost? How many minutes have he played? In what kind of direction game have went? If we were losing, then we were sprinting like the last 30 minutes. Maybe I will skip something. But if I notice that the team is okay, that everything is fine, maybe I will do just some unusual. I do some type of strength exercises, but everything I like to keep it low, low reps, low sets, maybe with not so big load, but maybe focus a little bit on explosive things, just to activate them a little bit more, and then I leave them, and we are after that doing some mobility work and everything else. But more of these kind of strategies, I use them on match day match day -1. It's still close to the game. Again, if I cannot use too much load because they will be fatigued for tomorrow, and the most important thing is tomorrow's game. But with the athletes and with the players, I sometimes like to use this approach of micro dosing one day before a game, and doing short sets, short reps with a lot of rest, between the sets. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree that it is possible to train on match day -1, and so in some sports, that they train even on match day.
On match day, yeah.
The morning to activate and increase the testosterone levels and improve the arousal of the players. Actually, I have a student of mine. He's a master's student, and he's developing this research project about using isometric contractions on match day -1.
Yeah,
because since there is no the stretch and shortening cycle, the damage is very low. The activation is quite high, and you don't have the muscle damage effects during the match. And he's testing this hypothesis. I mean, he's trying to make the same number and time under tension between two conditions, dynamic and static. So we are testing right now. Actually, he did some data collection yesterday, and today,
perfect.
Which is the in theory, the 24 hours later, we will see the how damage and fatigue is manifesting today compared to previous day.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I would like to check these results. How much fatigue is. So it sounds pretty interesting. You have great students there. That these are good projects and good topics that should be answered. These are practical solution that you can immediately use and put it in training sessions. We also done, it wasn't a study, it was just we wanted to see in the club what is happening, and we done like an 8 minutes, we test jumps. We done 8 minutes of our warm-up, that is consistent of some isometric work, maybe some jumps, maybe some medicine balls, some neuromuscular warm-up, not just running or rolling. It was more focused on that part. And we noticed that, and we test again the jumps, and we noticed that we have like better results from 3 to 6 centimeters for between the players. Just good structured warm-up can really prepare them for the competition and for this training session. And yesterday we have one event. We were speaking about the range of motion and these small effects of warm up, and we have one question from one guy. He asked, "How much or what can I do that I improve his range of motion before training session to keep him safe in training session, and after that training session is keep back on the same level?" These are so good questions that should be answered. But what we notice is that with proper warm up, with proper strategies, you can really improve performance, but also improve things like range of motion and jump performance and sprint performance, just in 6 to 8 minutes. But it should be, with good materials, with good stuff.
Yeah, actually, I am also involved right now in a paper. It's submitted in a big journal, and it is about warm up. So we didn't say anything before, but warm up is.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but it is a hot topic in the end, because we are maybe we are turning the attention again to the warm up. Because of the discussion on post-activation potentiation, post-activation performance enhancement, and actually any kind of good warm-up or any adequate warm-up strategy is post-activation performance enhancement strategy.
That's it.
It is true.
That's why you are doing the warm-up in the first place.
Yeah, and maybe we should focus less on injury prevention because there is no real evidence about it. But in terms of acute performance enhancement and about the feeling good of the player, maybe we are going in the right direction. Then it is good to take a look again into the warm-up studies and try to draw some practical ideas on how to easily and fastly perform the warm-up, which can have acute but also chronic effects because the microdosing can also be done during the warm-up. That's the point.
That's the point. But this is something that I would like to confirm. Am I doing some performance enhancement for the long term with these short term warm-ups, like if with this 10 minutes and again 10 minutes and 10 minutes and 10 minutes, am I doing them better, in the future?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, we don't have too many evidences, but from the practical experience, we feel that when the player is exposed to micro doses of neuromuscular training or even mobility training within the warm-up, with time he can even improve. But at least he can maintain good levels. That's the interesting point of it.
Yeah, here in our club, Dinamo, we sometimes have guests, from different federations, from different clubs. They are coming here, and then we speak about different topics. And when we come to the part of warm up, sometimes in the first few presentations, I was mentioning warm up, but after like third presentation, fourth, I don't like the warm up. I like maybe this is performance time. We are getting you better for that training session, but also we are getting you better for long term. This is the time where I'm developing you, not just warming up you for training sessions. And that's why sometimes I don't like here in Croatia there's also some you can have some like sentences or conclusions like, yeah, you're doing just warm-ups or warm up the team. Yeah, but it's not just a warm up, it's a performance part when I'm building you, when I'm helping you, that you can be better guy today, tomorrow, and that you are safe and so on. So definitely the warm-ups are a part where we can use them better and smarter.
And we are just speaking about the physical performance viewpoint, but actually if you think of skills, it's also a good moment in which you can concentrate in few skills or techniques that can be improved in a very short period of time.
That's it.
And sometimes you don't have this opportunity during the main part of the training session.
Yeah, maybe you can use, I don't know, first 5 minutes of warm up to teach something, or the last 3 minutes to teach something, or maybe you can use it also for a flexible assessment. Like let's use these 3 minutes of warm up or performance part to check how are you performing on that test or that exercise. He doesn't even need to know that is a test for you. You can do it. So basically you can test every day or every week.
It's true, because we are maybe our mindset is very focused on traditional testing, on protocols. When we speak about yo-yo or repeated sprints and so on, but sometimes we can use very simpler tests on daily basis. We don't need to validate in scientific terms these tests, because they are necessary to make decisions about the training session. Then I think that the training session and the warm-up or any part of the training session is also useful for the assessments, because the coaches and fitness coaches are making this process all the time, even though they are not totally conscious that they are doing they are running this process. But it is true, They are assessing, and they are trying to improve something that they are seeing. They don't need to, take notes and have spreadsheets for everything.
That's it. That's it. Let's use the range of motion example that I mentioned. Like before every training session, I can check your internal or external rotation of the hip, or I can put you in a, let's say, hockey squat position and check you every time what is happening with your body. Like every Monday, I will do this in the warm up.
Yeah, you can even feel how stiff is the player because of the previous match.
That's it.
How the joint is becoming more relaxed over time during the week. So I think there are many ways to assess what you want without necessarily stopping the training session to test.
Yeah. Well, definitely some of the direction that we should maybe go. It's again process that can help you in your decision making daily. If you assess flexibly, you are noticing that is something is happening, maybe you will change one part of your training session, or maybe you will change the whole day because the tissue is not preparing so fast, or he's a little bit fatigued, or you notice that his, I don't know, internal rotation is even worse than the day before, so let's put some more work into it. Yeah, definitely something that we should be doing. And the last topic for me is about starters and no starters.
Mm-hmm.
I also read some work from you. Position training sessions are something that I'm also pretty interested in, and I know that people who will be hearing this would like to hear about this topic. And what do you think? Do we train enough for these guys? What is happening with them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there are huge differences between starters and non-starters, especially if the non-starter is consistently a non-starter player.
Yeah,
and the opposite is also true. If you are starting all the matches, it's obvious that you'll be more conditioned if you take into consideration the loads and the match loads, which are very, very high. But at the same time, you are more fatigued. Then the match load plus training loads should be considered on a weekly basis. And sometimes the non-starters are under-trained or under-stimulated because they are not doing so much as the starters, especially because they don't have the opportunity to perform the actions related to the match, and they are not covering as much distance or high intensity distance as the starters, because even though they perform the compensatory training sessions or top-ups, in most cases it's not the same. It's not possible to reproduce the match in a training session. That's the thing. Then again, I'm sorry if it's too repetitive, but actually I think that even in this case the microdosing is a smart strategy. Because you can offer some microdosing, not of strength training in this case, but sprinting or high intensity runs over the week. So even if you have performed the top up, and the top up doesn't entirely compensate for the lack of match stimulus, maybe during the week, if you perform like 4 sprints, 20 meters, for sure this is a microdose, for sure. But maybe it can have an effect of maintaining their fitness, and even that effect that maybe might prevent injuries of the hamstrings.
What do you think? What is the best day, to do? Let's say we have the guys who can play like 20 minutes or less. When is the best day to do this composition training session? Because we know that you are tapering or preparing them for Saturday. So this is the best day to do this composition training session on Saturday because their bodies are getting prepared for that day. Or if we are doing the composition training session next day, what is the best scenario? Or is there best scenario for this part?
I think the worst in practical terms is match day +1, because if you apply this compensatory training of the non-starters on match day +1 and the starters are recovering, because now there is a discussion if it's better to recover on match day +1 or match day +2, but consider that this club is recovering the starters on match day +1. If the non-starters are performing the compensatory training on match day +2, their fatigue levels will be totally different, and it's trouble, for the rest of the week.
Even on match day +3, because they are coming one day after it, especially if you will do like a hard position training session.
Then in my opinion, Marco, the best day is match day. And so in some cases they use the venue where they played to perform the compensatory training, but I know that in some cases it's almost impossible because of the supporters.
And especially when you are outside, in the away game, you don't have time. This was also a problem for me. I put like 4 different scenarios. We have today is a home game, tomorrow off. Today is a home game, tomorrow training session, and you can have away game and both scenarios. We try to predict every possible scenario. Okay, if this scenario is today, you have this type of compensation training session. But for me, is also the best thing if I can do everything on a match day. This is the day, we will do it. I have one more. Well, it's not like a question, but it's more like a statement. But about the volume, some compensation training sessions that can happen here in Croatia and the clubs is something like, short intervals or something like that. Short or maybe some long intervals. It's the strategy that is the most used here. Like, okay, after training session, let's do 2 times 5 minutes or 15 intervals. 80 meters, something like that. Then you collect maybe 2 kilometers. That's good, that's fine. But when I'm checking it, but if this guy is again non-starter next week, then again next week, then again next week, he's missing like 16 kilometers in the total volume from the starters. So what do you think about that? Is the volume also important for non-starters guys?
Yeah, but I think it's less critical than the intensity. Because even if you perform like high intensity intervals, maybe you are reaching the high intensity activity target, but probably you are not reaching the sprinting and deceleration loads. Then you must sacrifice something every time you choose any kind of compensatory training, because in some clubs they perform small-sided games. Okay, it's fine, but again, you miss some types of activities. Then my impression is that maybe a composite between analytical and game should be better to fulfill most of the requirements during this compensatory training sessions. But to address more directly your question, in my opinion, volume is not so critical, because in the other days, if they train with the rest of the teammates, they will accumulate lots of kilometers performing runs or walking or any kind of activity. I still feel that the intensity is more critical, and especially the volume above certain thresholds, and that these thresholds are also questionable. They can be discussed.
The speed zones and everything, but something that is maybe not the best strategy, but it's something that is helping us right now. I really like the answer about the volume and intensity. And what do you think? Let's say if you are performing compensation training session and you would like to top up something, if you want to say in percentage, how much in percentage you would like to compensate from a game? Let's say if you have 10 kilometers in a game, how much would you like to compensate the next day? Or you have 1 kilometer of high-speed running, how much is enough to compensate in high-speed running that you're safe or that you're okay?
I think it depends on the rest of the microcycle, but I've been hearing from good practitioners like you that for example, if you perform 200 meters sprinting during the match, you should have at least another 200 meters.
One
at the top. Yes,
Yeah.
1-1 or even 1-1.2 or 1.3. It depends on the.
Has to be a little bit above, yeah.
Yeah, to be, let's say, safer and to get the players fit. Then it's difficult to speak about percentage, but with games, I've been seeing like 4K on the during the top up or 5, which means at least half of what they do during a real match. Yeah, in terms of total volume, but in terms of the other metrics, it's more difficult to have the target because it depends on the format of the game. In some formats, it's impossible to reach high density runs, and I think that one of the most critical points about this topic is that most of the transition games that we need to perform very high intensity runs, they are not possible on compensatory training sessions simply because you don't have the number of players available for the training. Then it's a big challenge.
You need to like think about all of that aspect and to program these dimensions, these rest numbers, or this duration of rest. Yeah, they are sometimes challenging to like program and to put it inside to collect everything. From my experience, been doing like compensation training sessions, a little bit more of volume. I need to say something in percentages, something like 70% of game. So yeah, we were going. This training session sometimes is 2 hours.
Okay.
To warm up, we put some strength exercise also on them. A little bit of microdosing because he didn't do. If it is next day, like on match day +1. So yeah, we start with individual strength because it's small number of players, so we can focus more on them. So individual thing for you. And whoops. Then we start with the warm up, collect some volume here, maybe some passing, collect some volume here, then maybe some exercise with change of direction, collect something, or like small study games, maybe some short intervals at the end to collect high speed running. Yeah, and I forget sprinting at the start of training session, so we try to collect like that, volume in the warm up, sprinting in some exercise, small study games for change of direction, high speed running for high speed runnings, and maybe at the end also if we need some volume, but usually no. But yeah, we are putting them hard because, in my opinion, is that we cannot simulate game load, but I need to put then maybe more load next day because it's hard to simulate it. This is the idea. This is the idea on the pitch.
Yeah, I think that the only way to mimic the match load is like organizing a friendly match. But it's not easy to
it's hard. Yeah, it's hard sometimes to find, and then you need to find more players from maybe some other team to combine it because you don't have it. You don't have so many players there. But hey, I think that we come to an end. I think that we can speak, even more about the microdosing, about the loads, about the warm-ups, about the compensation training sessions. But I think that the people who will be listening to this, they will find some pretty, great informations and great information they can use in practice. So, Fábio, thank you for being our guest. I really appreciate it. For me, it was really interesting talk. You notice that I all the time ask some questions because I'm interested in them, and I think that everybody else will be. Yeah, thank you one more time for your time, and I hope that we will do this in future.
Yeah, I thank you, Marco, because it's a real pleasure for me. I consider you my friend, although we didn't meet
Also,
many times, but we are always talking and speaking. I like a lot, appreciate, because I learn when I talk to you, and it was the same here. I could learn and could hear your opinions about what we are also working with, and it's always a pleasure.